Hey there, welcome to Science Flixtion on the Barroom Network. This is our very first episode. My name is Salim Sadarwala, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Carl Ames. Carl, how's it going, man?
Great. Happy to be here.
Getting into the show itself and why, our passion behind science fiction movies and comic book movies and comics and reading like that, I thought, it would be a good idea to kind of introduce ourselves as uh, what got us into like comic books and science fiction movies and stuff like that growing up. I'll let you start, Carl. I mean, you can
Yep.
introduce yourself and then you can let us know like your top three movies that you like in your like as far as the science fiction genre is concerned.
Yeah. So yeah, go. I'm Carl Ames. Go by Ninja Turtle online. That's on Twitter, Instagram, so on. Um, Pretty much been a nerd all my life. I can remember my earliest days of like I used to live in the suburbs, and we were from Chicago. Live in the suburbs, and we would go to church in Chicago. Still, it was like a 50-mile trip, and my mom wanted me to have something to do like while we're in the car. It's like an hour-long ride, so we used to go to Walmart. There's also a local comic book store in my area, but we would go to Walmart, and she'd just say, hey, why don't you try some comic books? I mean, it's weird that it came from her. It was her suggestion, but Walmart had like the little spinny rack back then, and my first comic books were X-Men, Spider-Man, and Sonic the Hedgehog. Surprisingly, wish I kept that in good condition. That was that's a lot of money. But yeah, just read those all the time and wore those out, and just became super into comics. And of course, back in the day, watching all sorts of science fiction and a lot of action movies too. Like I was just thinking about it today, how much I miss watching Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme, stuff like that. Back in the day, used to watch those all the time. But yeah, those are my roots. I've been playing video games. I'm a big gamer too. I watch a lot of anime nowadays. I'm wearing My Hero Academia shirt right now. That's big anime, and which is actually very adjacent to comic books, superhero comic books. If you don't know anything about My Hero Academia, um, but yeah. So as far as my favorite movies go, just quickly, like my number one is Black Panther. Like that's just not MCU number one, and also just favorite movie period is Black Panther. It just hits a lot of notes for me, and you know, I know that it's not the best movie ever, but it is my favorite movie. So I can criticize it without rose tinted glasses or whatever. But another movie that I've always loved and will always watch with just awe and spectacle is like Terminator 2. It's just this fantastic movie. Visually beautiful, a lot of great characters, great storylines, super still relevant. Arnold Schwarzenegger was just the king back then, Really couldn't do any wrong for my young child eyes, I guess. But the movie's still an incredible movie, regardless. And then just kind of another MCU pick, not necessarily a number three for me, but I still really love Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Uh, uh, One of the best MCU movies, if not the best one. Uh, Incredible storyline, big stakes to it. Introduced a lot of good characters and just a lot of important themes going on with that movie, and it's just Kevin Feige and the MCU just knocking one out of the park.
Yeah, excellent. I think I'll get into my movies later, but it's funny, you and I have two of the same favorite movies in our top three, or just the movies that we really connect with. But kind of introduce myself as far as I'm Salim Sudderwala again, and how I really got into comic books, like reading comic books a lot as a kid. Um, I never really read in general when I was young. I was always kind of forced to read outside of school stuff. Like yeah, you have to read for school. That's different, but kind of making you kind of read in the summer and things like that. And you go into the library, I should say. My parents would take me there. I would go there with my cousins, my sisters, and walking through, trying to pick up books. I noticed they had a comic book section. Um, and I don't know if Carl, like I said, if you remembered the comic books, like from like the old ones, especially like from like the 40s, 60s, Marvel had this essentials
Hmm.
of like the series for each, like for Spider-Man, Captain America, Avengers, and Thor, and all of the Ant-Man, and all of them. They had the essentials. So my local library had a bunch of this. The ones they had the most of was Spider-Man. So now I did reach a lot more Spider-Man than I did all the other ones. But that's how I really got hooked into it, and I couldn't stop reading comic books. Watching different movies, like really sci-fi related stuff. I would always really get more intrigued on the sci-fi side as opposed to really anything. Um, and that's how my passion grew for comics and for sci-fi and related movies and TV shows in general. And not to kind of get into my top three favorite movies, like I said, two of them are the same ones that are on your list. One being Terminator 2. I mean, like 100% agree with you. That movie still holds up. It's still like funny when we watch, when we see anything happen, like with animatronics and people building robots. It's like there's a movie about this. They shouldn't be doing this, as a
Right.
joke. But it's funny. But that movie, like it, it's one of the most like like perfect movies that were ever created. And I wish we talked about it. Like I wish they had done more with it. Obviously they've made a few more movies, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely hands down one of my favorite all time. The second one I'll say not only my favorite MCU movie, but like just like one of my favorite movies, and I 100% agree with you, is Captain America: Winter Soldier. Yeah, that hit on everything. I was always intrigued by how they would approach that storyline, just because they would have to adjust on how they introduced Bucky back into the equation, how they would go about that, and I thought it was perfect. Like to this day, I don't think there's an MCU movie that'll get released that'll beat that for me. Like it was perfect from the start to the end. Everything about like what Captain America is, like more and more you find out in that movie
Yeah.
who he is, like everything about like his character and everything like that. That's like one of my favorite aspects of it as well. And then the last movie I'll say I really um love and the thought of uh is The Matrix. The Matrix I really love because it's always been one of my fascinations. What people always ask, it's funny and it's kind of joking way too in my mind, but like where we come from and things like that. And it's I always wonder like what if we are a simulation? Like what if like someone created a program and this program is just that's what's controlling us all. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's half joking, but like it's just funny. And the movie itself was just phenomenal. Like I remember, not to get too far off the topic. I mean, it's kind of related, but I remember reading that Will Smith had originally been approached to do The Matrix,
Okay.
and I guess he read the storyline and he was like, "This is weird. I don't know about this," and he decided to do Wild Wild West instead. I don't know if you knew that,
No, I didn't.
but yeah, he decided to do Wild Wild West and forego The Matrix, and obviously Wild Wild West was a major flop.
Yeah.
And I guess you think about it, it's like we don't know The Matrix other than Keanu Reeves as the lead character. But I do wonder how it would have been if it would have been the same success with Will Smith. Obviously, Will Smith is a very charismatic actor, charismatic person, celebrity wise, and everything. So I think they would have still made it work, but it definitely would have been a much different, I feel like, feel to the movie. I think so. Yeah, those are my top three as far as the movies are concerned for me. But yeah, I think we have a really good first show going into our what we want to talk about today. Hawkeye was recently released a trailer. It's been a few weeks now, but that's going to be MCU's next big show that is coming out in December. I know they have a couple of movies coming out as well. One of being the Spider-Man Far From Home.
No
Far
Way
From
Home.
Home. No Way
No Way
Home. I
Home.
keep
Yeah.
No Way Home. No Way
I
Home.
always do that too.
Yeah, I always try to remember because I know they had Homecoming, then it was Far From Home, then No Way Home. They have that home theme thing going on with that. But yeah, so that's coming out in December, but also Hawkeye will be coming out. And I think there's a lot even with the first trailer, there's a lot to kind of dive into and kind of learn. So we'll go ahead and play the first trailer right now for those that maybe have not seen it yet.
This is the first Christmas we've had together in years.
I love you guys. I'm making up for some lost time.
Authorities are wondering if the masked vigilante who terrorized the city's underworld is back.
The past has caught up with me.
Should we be worried?
No, it's nothing. I'll be home for Christmas. I promise. When I wore this suit, I made a whole lot of enemies.
You're a Hawkeye.
Who the hell are you?
Some people have actually called me the world's greatest archer.
Are you one of those people?
It's the most wonderful.
Hey, babe, I should be back in a day or two. Hang on a second.
With the kids jingle belling and everyone telling.
Things have gotten more complicated.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the most wonderful time. Yes, the most wonderful.
This is too dangerous. Definitely not this one.
You don't have to say definitely like that. Holy shit! There are arrows more dangerous than that one?
Oh, it's just some Christmas.
Yeah, so that was a great first trailer. I thought like it gave a lot of good little tidbits that we could really go through. Now we're just gonna go through each character and kind of talk about like what we saw in the trailer. But before we get into that, I do want to mention, obviously MCU doesn't generally take from one exact storyline when they're creating the shows or movies or whatever they do. But this one looks like it's supposed to be from like loosely based on one of the run comic books run of series by Matt Fraction and David Aja called Hawkeye. As you can see the picture that we put up on screen. It might be worthwhile checking out. You can it's like a 22 series issue, or issue series, I should say. But that isn't the entirety of it. They kind of made it into a graphic novel, like a hardcover set. So it's the entire 22 series. You can get on Amazon, I believe, and I'm sure you can find it at like Barnes and Nobles or wherever you go to, and or even your local comic book shop, they might have it as well. But might be worthwhile checking out before December. It's a good series. I think it really dug into Hawkeye, the character, and Clint Barton in general. So it could be worth checking out for those that are interested. But yeah, let's transition here into the each character that like we know will be in the series and that we saw in this trailer itself. Now, technically, she's wasn't in this trailer. We know she's part of the story. Laura Barton, played by Linda Cardinelli. It doesn't look like she was in the first trailer, like I said, but he does seem to talk to her on the phone. Now, I don't know how that'll play into it too. I don't know how much they're going to show his family, because I think this happens probably right after Endgame, like right after Endgame, like when they finally come back after the blip when they reverse what Thanos did.
Mhm.
Thanos did. So I think that's when it's really set into it. So, what were your thoughts on that as far as his family potentially being in this trailer, as far as what they'll do and how much of his family they'll show, and more into that side of his storyline?
Well, we do see his oldest daughter, and a lot of people going into it, especially before this Kate Bishop reveal, which we'll talk more about her in a bit. But we going into what was it?
Oh, the
When
Infinity Wars. Infinity
Infinity War.
Wars.
I don't
Yeah,
know why
yeah.
I couldn't think of that. But just seeing those scenes with Hawkeye training her and calling her Hawkeye, like, oh, is she going to be the Kate Bishop of the MCU? And we're not going to actually have Kate Bishop, but no, we are. So those are two separate characters. But we, she's there. We don't know what kind of role or how important his daughter and the rest of his family are going to be. Obviously, they're not going to be, the main center of attention. And like you said, his wife is around, so it is confirmed that she's alive. She's not dead or anything. He talks to her on the phone, so we don't know if it's just a conflict of schedules with the actress, or if she quits, or they just couldn't book her, COVID complications, whatever. It could be a number of things, but right now we don't see her in the trailer, so she may not be in the series whatsoever. And I don't think the actress has said anything about it either. So we'll see again, but they're alive and well, so we don't need to necessarily concern ourselves too much about the family.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And you did mention obviously Kate Bishop. We thought maybe his, instead of having Kate Bishop, they would have his daughter take the mantle, because they did, like you said, they teased it in Endgame when they showed like his family disappearing.
Yeah.
Him shooting the doing archery practice with his daughter. But yeah, let's talk about Kate Bishop. She is played by Haley Stanfield, and in the comics, Kate Bishop is eventually who takes up the Hawkeye mantle. Kate is Hawkeye's biggest fan and has modeled his her entire everything around him as like the world's greatest archer is concerned, and that's what she is supposed to be. Obviously, we'll later get into a little bit more, but like we're part of the Young Avengers. But yeah, so Kate is going to be kind of like a relationship building basically between Clint and Kate, and throughout this whole series as they get to know each other. What are your initial thoughts on how you think that they will approach with Kate? And I would also ask, like in the comics, how much did you know about Kate Bishop?
Well, I know what this the series is like you said is going to involve a lot of this the comic book run that we talked about with the Matt Fraction run, um, which deals a lot with both Clint and Kate. And Kate's origin has a lot of mob influence in there, so this will have that type of storyline be involved, like to go into her backstory, and we'll know more about her family and what's going on with that character. But like you said, she's very much influenced by Clint and trying to fill in his shoes. And in the comics, she really did actually take that mantle of Hawkeye, and it wasn't something take is actually a bad word. He gave it to her officially. He calls her Hawkeye. So it's there's another example of that in the comic books too. Just real quick, there's actually two Wolverines. There's
Right.
Logan. We know Wolverine as Wolverine, but then there's Laura Kenny, or X-23 as some people, but he gave her the title of Wolverine, so she is officially Wolverine in the comics. And there's just two Wolverines and there's two Hawkeyes. It's just, and there's also two Spider-Mans. There's Miles Morales, there's Peter Parker. So it's not like one is going to replace eventually, sure, but it's not like Clint dies. We shouldn't expect that, at least at the end of the series, if that's what anyone is going to go with. But I don't really know a ton about Kate Bishop, other than that she's a part of this she was a part of the Young Avengers team. It's not really a big team right now. They'll probably bring it back in the comic books eventually, but she was a part of the Young Avengers team with a bunch of other characters.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the Young Avengers before we move on here. But the Young Avengers will slowly are being introduced. We already saw that they introduced Billy and Tommy, who are AKA known as Wiccan and Speed, from WandaVision. If you want to throw up that picture of them, so yeah, they showed them in WandaVision, introduced them, being part of that. They're eventually, I'm assuming, going to be brought back to be part of the Young Avengers. And then they had Elijah Bradley, who plays the Patriot. He was introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of throwing in kind of that seed to going forward. And then in Loki, they introduced Kid Loki when he went into like that one weird area outside of like the timeline. They introduced Kid Loki. That could be a factor as well. And then America Chavez will debut in Doctor Strange. They haven't introduced her yet, obviously, but she will be in the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, played by. Do you know how to pronounce her name?
I believe it's Xochitl Gomez.
Xochitl Gomez, okay, and and then obviously the other characters I think they'll be introduced later on as well are like Ms. Marvel. Kamala Khan will be played by Iman Vellani in the upcoming Ms. Marvel's Disney Plus series. I think they're going to have that. So, like, slowly but surely, they're going to get that Young Avengers crew. And for the funny thing, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So right now, Peter Parker is essentially that age where because like when the Young Avengers come out in the comics, Peter is in his 20s by then,
right?
Late in his mid to later 20s. But right now in the MCU, because of the blip, that 5 years went by, he's still a high school kid. So one thing I'm curious is what they do with Peter as far as how old they'll make him. Are they going to fast forward him to be college age here pretty soon, or being past college pretty soon?
I don't think so. Here? I mean, like with the new movie, I believe if it's not like the entire movie, like at some point in the movie, about a year will pass from Far From Home to No Way Home. So I believe that's what I heard is going to be about a year after that, but it's still going to be hard to place exactly when, like how it relates to Doctor Strange and how it falls in the timeline, and then even this Hawkeye series. Like once we finally see the Hawkeye series, we know it's obviously around Christmas season, so it just kind of depends. Was the blip, did the in game, did that happen like over the summer and this is the same year? Is it the next year, 2024? Like once we get like a good concrete like year on there, hopefully they tell us. That would be really nice. Just like the first episode, it is December 22nd, 2023. That would be awesome. So we can just say, okay, now we know this is happening here and this is happening here, because there's a lot of confusion based off of that.
No, 100%. I know that's kind of going a little off topic, but it's something I've been thinking about, and I wanted to get your pick your brain on that. It's just kind of funny because, like I said, when you're talking about Young Avengers and Peter Parker is still only a high school kid, so he technically would qualify to be a Young Avenger. But and obviously in the comic book world, the Young
Mhm.
Avengers came out much later when Peter was already much older.
Yeah,
But
I like how
yeah,
and I like how they did that in Far From Home, where they had that one kid that didn't get blipped, that he was like a high school kid or like
right.
middle school kid or whatever, and he didn't get blipped, and it's 5 years later, and he's like this chiseled out man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They did do that. That was funny. But yeah, so moving on into the trailer a little bit more. Um, it looks like what part of the storyline that's going to be centered about the show is when when they go into when they go back to an Endgame to go get Clint. um, they're showing him as he's going on this like killing spree of underground like mobsters and like the yakuza and all these different gang mafias. And he basically becomes this character called Ronin. Um, and he takes up that, and he's and they kind of then don't really mention anything about Ronin, right? They kind of just drop it. So that's obviously pretty important. He's probably pissed off a lot of people, and they can't just forget that happened, right?
Mhm.
So it looks like they're bringing that back here, and that's going to be kind of centered. It seems like, and potentially it looks kind of like maybe Kate Bishop was taking back the Ronin, or bringing Ronin back up. I kind of had a different theory too, which we'll get into. But yeah, just your thoughts on how you see that the Kate Bishop with the Ronin and him, obviously the storyline of him getting back into facing the consequences of his actions in the past.
Well, let's see. Like in the trailer, like there is a Ronin character dressed up and taking on the gangs and the mobs and stuff. And for me, like there's a scene where I believe he's taking off the mask and it's Kate, and it's like, "Oh, you're Hawkeye." So I believe it's Kate. She's not only like we've been saying, she idolizes him. So I think she knew, or at least maybe found out that he was Ronin, and she just decided to wear that costume and do the same thing and take out mobsters and stuff. Because, like I said, her origins is that very heavily tied to gangs and stuff, so she's probably maybe trying to take revenge on what they might have done to her family or something like that. Being undercover and doing the same things that Hawkeye, that Clint did. At least that's my theory. I don't, until we find out in about a month from now, we'll see. But that's what I think. But then there's also Hawkeye, or I should say, Clint wasn't the only Echo, or excuse me, Clint wasn't the only um, Ronin in the comic book series. Once he dropped that mantle, another character named Echo picked up that mantle and became the new Ronin. So this is Echo, and this is her when she was Ronin. This was like pretty much a couple issues after Clint dropped that mantle. So we're going to see Echo, and she's actually going to be a main, or at least a big antagonist for this series. Uh, but I don't know exactly if she is the biggest villain or the main antagonist of the series. But she is going to be here, and she's actually going to play a pretty big role in the Marvel universe, the MCU going forward for quite a while. So we're going to see a lot of this character.
Yeah, so I actually think I know they kind of show Kate Bishop potentially looking like she might be Ronin, but I'm wondering if it's more so like this Ronin character starts, going back on the killing sprees again. And because Kate Bishop is such a big Hawkeye fan and she knew Hawkeye was doing that, so she tries to go find out Clint. And then Clint is also trying to go find, who Ronin is, who's doing these things, who's bringing it back up from his past. And that's kind of coming back to haunt him. And I think it's actually going to be Maya Lopez, who the actor who's going to be playing Maya Lopez is actually Aliqua Cox. And to kind of give a background on Echo, like her abilities in the comics, she's like an Olympic level athlete, concert level pianist. Kind of gives you kind of her intelligence as well. Kind of a really strong martial artist, highly skilled acrobatic, gifted ballerina. Again, kind of shows her athletic ability and her intellectualism. Very photographic reflexes, similar to I want to say similar to God, I can't the name. Just they showed the character in the Black Widow,
The
Taskmaster.
Taskmaster.
Taskmaster,
Yeah.
yeah, similar to that, where she can mimic everything, fighting skills, everything that you do. She can do as well. And I know she was also kind of a Daredevil character. Because she is the adopted daughter of the Kingpin, and the Kingpin and the Daredevil are like the two main, like the Daredevil main nemesis is Kingpin. So I know she comes up in that aspect as well. And another interesting thing about her, she's deaf in the comic books. And will be interesting as well. This is connection to Clint, because they never talk about this yet in the MCU, but I think they hinted in this trailer, because when you see a sideway view of Clint, you see a hearing aid in his ear. And Clint Barton in the comics is hard of hearing, so he has a hearing aid, which is kind of plays into, he can't hear, but his vision is, superb. Absolutely, he's like, he can't miss a vision. So that's going to be interesting as well, I think, if they pull that in. And I think it's interesting. Like I said, I feel like she might be actually Ronin in this in the show.
And a fun fact, which you mentioned, Echo is deaf, just like Daredevil is blind. The actress playing Echo is also deaf. She is a deaf actress. So they actually, they went all the way
Nice,
for
yeah.
that one. So that's a really cool thing. Speaking of also Daredevil, which I just learned literally right before the show. Like I said, we're going to see a lot of Echo going forward. We're going to see a lot more of Daredevil related characters, if not Daredevil and Kingpin specifically, in the MCU pretty soon, if not in
Right.
this series. And so this is kind of the way of them bridging the gap, not just for the Young Avengers, but bringing us back to those good old Netflix Marvel days. And we'll
Right.
see some of those guys pop up. I don't know necessarily in this series, but it is already rumored that we're going to have an Echo Disney Plus series too, and at some point in the future, we'll get to see more of the Daredevil stuff. But yeah, I'm pretty excited now because I learned about that today.
No, exactly. And the rumor was that Daredevil, maybe not Daredevil himself, but Matt Murdock, was Charlie Cox, I believe.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be in as Matt Murdock in Far From. Again, I can't.
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
No Way Home.
No Way Home. Sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. I have no clue why. And the funny thing is that No Way Home is the movie that I'm most excited about too. So, but yeah, he's supposed to be in it supposedly as Matt Murdock, as representing Peter Parker as his lawyer, supposedly. So we'll see. That was rumored. It was never confirmed. I know there's a lot of things going on with that movie that's been rumored but not confirmed, but things are slowly starting to leak. We'll see if that happens as well. But I know they're supposed to bring Charlie Cox back as the Daredevil. So that's again ties in with Echo. And if they do the show, maybe Charlie Cox will be in the Echo series as well. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that kind of talk about Ronan and Maya Lopez and Echo. And then moving on, another character we see in here is Kate's mom, Eleanor Bishop. In the comics, Eleanor was the matriarch of the very wealthy family. She's kind of like a villain in the comic, like not like a like super villain per se, but she's kind of, I think, someone that's not exactly on the up and up. So I feel like so they have Vera from Farmiga playing her, but yeah, she's supposed to be basically an antagonist in general, not necessarily someone that um, that's gonna be like, you know, a good character, but it'll be an important character for sure. I'm not sure how, considering who they got to play her, I'd imagine she's gonna be in the show, a big part of the show. I don't think they would get someone like Vera Farmiga, who's very, you know, in her all right. She's done pretty well in her career. So I would imagine that they'll, you know, go far into that as far as her relationship, the mom and daughter relationship, and they'll probably set up more, you know, other storylines going forward with that. And then the people that like Kate and Clint and all these will have conflicts with are the tracksuit Draculas. They're a mafia gang. I think they might be the bad guys. I think there's a scene in the trailer you see them kind of holding them up and having them in the trailer. And I think they're could probably be the main like people that they're kind of fighting with. And I don't know who, if they'll be teaming up with anyone and how everything will work about. But I think they're gonna be a big part of it as well.
Like I don't think there's going to be like them being the driving force. It could be just like the jobbers, or say, the guys that got to get beat up. There's no Ultron bots. There's no
Right.
no Shatari or anything like that. These are the guys that are going to get smacked around by Kate and Clint. So in general, now they could represent, either they are the Magia, which is a crime group in Marvel comic books, or they're just going to replace the Magia and be the Tracksuit Draculas. Yeah, I don't know the exact details of that Matt Fraction run, but I'm pretty sure they're in there. But in general, there will be a bunch of dudes in tracksuits getting blown up and shot at by arrows.
Right. And I think they're one of the big parts of that Hawkeye series. And throughout that comic series, they're part of it. So I know they hire like different guys to kind of take out Barton. And like the leader, there's like a big conflict between him and Barton as well. So yeah, that'll be interesting as far as how they develop that angle as well. And the last thing I want to talk to you about, it might be nothing. It might be something. I'm very intrigued about it in general, because I'm intrigued to see how they bring back this big character that's obviously part of MCU. They showed the Rogers the musical. It's interesting that they don't call it Captain America, but just Rogers. And obviously, due to Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of Captain America, and because Captain America 4 was announced, and obviously Sam Wilson is going to be Captain America in there. But like I said, I find it interesting they call it Rogers, and not Captain America. And I'm very intrigued to see how they bring back Steve Rogers, because we know that Steve Rogers is still alive. He didn't die. And the end of Endgame, obviously we see Tony Stark dying because he gives up his life to save everyone, to bring everyone back.
Has a funeral.
The snap. Yeah, has a funeral, obviously.
Yeah.
But Steve Rogers obviously goes off into a different timeline, and he may have created other conflicts because of going back and creating another timeline of events and things like that. And then you see him back as an old man. But we know he's alive and well. He was old, but he didn't look like he was like on his deathbed old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was like maybe like 70s, but he still was pretty spry for his age. Like he still looked like he was very well, and health wise, he was like, doing what you would think he'd be doing fine, and he's maybe like just living somewhere and just doing something. So it'll be interesting what they'll do with Captain America, or not Captain America, it's Steve Rogers, because there was that rumor that Chris Evans was supposed to be coming back that leaked, and then Chris Evans squashed it supposedly. But I know a lot of times MCU likes to try to play coy when things do leak, because like for example, the other Spider-Man being in No Way Home, that leaked like over a year and a half ago, I want to say, right? That they were gonna probably be back, and there's gonna be something like a multiverse type of thing happening. And obviously they kept denying, and now we see like the villains are in it. So obviously more than likely you're gonna see the other Peter Parkers played by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield that are gonna probably be in this movie as well. So it's interesting how I'm curious to see how they handle it. Like, will they go back? Will they have Chris Evans as an old man, Steve Rogers, just appear in a scene somewhere, or will they go back and get Steve Rogers when he decided to go in the 40s to live his life with Agent Linda Carter and get him back because he created some kind of chaotic timeline? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that the Rogers the musical is just kind of like an Easter egg just for fun, or do you think there's going to be implications?
I think it's just a fun Easter egg. I mean, because if there was going to be a place to address this, it would have been best to do it in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and they already did. I mean, they had that joke where he's like on the moon or whatever. But I think if you're going to address something as big as Captain America's future status, you would handle it on a Captain America platform. So it would have been Falcon and Winter Soldier or in the next Captain America movie. I mean, I think this is just fun. I mean, obviously we've done so much like praising and of adoration of Iron Man postpartum and all of these other movies like Far From Home, having connections, and then having connections in Shang-Chi and so on, just talking about him and all the things he's been doing and setting up. But there hasn't really been any discussion about Cap other than the little mention in Falcon Winter Soldier. So I think this is just like kind of them making rounds. Okay, let's talk about Cap now. Let's praise him because we he was great, just as great as Tony. So we need to make sure that everyone in the world is not just talking about Tony Stark this, Tony Stark that. Let's have some more Cap stuff go about in the universe. That's how I feel about it.
That's fair. I guess I'll say this though, like in bringing up Captain or Steve Rogers, I should say more so in in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I don't know if they would do that because I think they were trying very hard to transition Sam Wilson as Captain America. So obviously they don't want to bring Steve Rogers into it. And Captain America 4, I don't think they'll do that yet either. Simply maybe like a teaser at like a post-credit teaser.
Yeah, he'll definitely be talked about.
Or like a post-credit teaser, like he'll appear or something. But I think they really want to, hammer in like Sam Wilson is Captain America now. Like that's what they want to do. So yeah, like I said, I'm always intrigued by these little things. Obviously, I wouldn't be a nerd if I wasn't intrigued by these like different possibilities that they could go with it. And we'll eventually get into like phase 4 and how that's going and get our thoughts on that as in future episodes. And I think next week we'll talk a little bit about Venom 2 because I think we'll both have watched it by then. So we'll give our thoughts on Venom 2 as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to get off?
Just lastly, we have to keep in mind real quick the Black Widow, Yelena Belova, that teaser at the end of the Black Widow, and somewhat teaser in the Falcon and Winter Soldier with the I can never remember her name, Contessa's name, but just that we're gonna probably see Black Widow in this as well. She could be part of that antagonist group as well. So who knows? Maybe she's the one that hired. I highly doubt she would hire Echo, but she's probably gonna show up at some point and just be a foil somewhere in there.
Yeah, she is actually. It's funny. I totally forgot to talk about her, but she is in the show, and like you said, she was Contessa, played by Julia Dreyfus. Um, she tells her that Clint Barton was who killed
Right.
her sister, which obviously is only the half truth. I mean, yeah, technically, but there was a reason why it had to happen. She kind of leaves. So like that's that Contessa character. I don't know a lot about her. I'm gonna learn more about her too here. But she's trying to mix things up here and try to create some chaos where there's a need to, like, what are her motives? Like,
Yeah, and I do wonder like how much of the public knows about exactly what happened with Thanos and Vormir
Yeah.
and the stones. Like they know the blip happened, they know people died, he came back, the Avengers saved the day, Iron Man died, Cap's retired. But like, do they know how much do they know these details about all these other worlds and all the other circumstances and things like that? They probably don't. And that's where that gray area is where Contessa can fit in and say, Hawkeye killed Natasha. Stuff like that they can just go anywhere with it.
No, 100%. Yeah, it'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see, and I'm sure as we get closer to December, we'll find out more about the show itself, and maybe another trailer will leak that we'll see some other scenes. But yeah, that's a wrap for today's episode. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Please follow me at Science Flixtion. You can see my tag on there. Follow Carl at Ninja Chortles. Tweet us about the show, what your thoughts might be. If you're excited about watching Hawkeye, what your top 3 favorite sci-fi movies might be. And yeah, just have any questions or discussions with us if you like. But till next time, Science Flixtion fans.
See ya.